As it is, India is not doing very well in literacy and numeracy. Our children don't know how to read or write. The levels are really pathetic. Now, at least 50% of 8th standard kids would be able to read and write, at their grade level. Now, you've introduced 4 new subjects into the system, and the literacy and numeracy rates have actually plummeted. Gender is performative, is what queer theory says. So you perform. So I'm performing being a woman, and the minute I get out, I can perform being a man by being aggressive or whatever it is. So they look at gender as a performative thing, nothing to do with the DNA. 3-year-old toddlers are told, you should touch yourself and see how it feels. Does it feel good? In fact, the counselor asks a toddler, so when you touch it, do you feel good? So this is exactly how they ask 3-year-old little kids, toddlers, right? And you can say this is in Europe, but it's not. It's already come to Jharkhand. United Nations is pushing for laws on that, and they got some pushback from the West. But what they want to say is that they want to destigmatize pedophilia and also decriminalize, because they say that just having an idea of wanting to be sexually involved with a minor does not make you a criminal. And so they have actually changed the word from pedophile to a minor attracted person, MAP it's called. And then you have autogynephilia, where men get aroused by dressing up as hyper-feminine women with all these prosthetic breasts and skimpy clothes, and they actually get sexually aroused. And these are the people that we're putting in front of our little kids when you have a drag queen story up. So there are 2 activities that happen in the NITI Aayog. There are external forces that lobby the NITI Aayog to make certain laws through the legislature. And there are some other, the external forces also come up with pre-packaged programs. So if I say, go through the NITI Aayog and I lobby them to make comprehensive sexuality education mandatory, the minute the law comes out, you have a plug-and-play program at the grassroots. So the government or people don't have to do anything. It's mandated. Here is a plug-and-play program. You just fit it in, and then you're good to go. So this is how the Breaking India forces operate through the NITI Aayog. Namaskar to everybody. Recently, you all may have heard in the news about Shiv Nadar schools. They passed out a survey and gave an option for little children to choose whether they were male, female or non-binary. And the parents were all flummoxed, saying, what the heck is this? Or there was also news on a CBSE Class 9 textbook section where they talked about dating and relationships. And people were wondering, so what has that got to do with social science, or why is this even included? So this book will tell you where these things trickle down from. Why are you seeing here and dots here and dots there, and you're not able to connect them? And you will understand why this is happening. So Rajiv ji talked about the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals and how education is part of these Sustainable Development Goals. So as part of this, India has also signed up to these goals, and which means India has signed up to sustainable education, if you will. And within sustainable education, Rajiv ji mentioned it, but I'm just going to recap it. There are 4 subjects, if you will, that are introduced. So one is global citizenship education, one is environmental education, the other is comprehensive sexuality education, and the 4th is social emotional learning. Rajiv ji mentioned these things briefly. Now, as it is, India is not doing very well in literacy and numeracy. Our children don't know how to read or write. The levels are really pathetic. Now, at least 50% of 8th standard kids would be able to read and write, at their grade level. Now, you've introduced 4 new subjects into the system, and the literacy and numeracy rates have actually plummeted. In fact, under the Sustainability Development Goals, literacy and numeracy are also there as part of the goals. But predominantly where you see funding and efforts and non-profits and big companies in India and overseas putting their efforts and money and resources is into these 4 fields. Nobody wants Indian children to read better or do math better. Nobody's putting their money there. But they call these skills 21st century skills. Right? And you'd think, of course, you want your child to have 21st century skills. Who wouldn't? But then you go into what 21st century skills, you would be surprised. So let's talk about the first so-called 21st century skills, which is comprehensive sexuality education. Again, the devil is in the details. There is a lot of word play. So you will, as soon as you hear it, you will think sex education could be whatever, something to do with sex education. But then you have to understand sex education is different from comprehensive sexuality education. Yeah. So what makes this new sex education comprehensive? So comprehensive ka matlab kya hai? What else are they adding to this sex education that you think, that you know about? What else are they adding? So the old-fashioned sex education, there was the adult education program, adolescence education program, there was the life skills program within the NCRT. But the old-fashioned education, sex education was about preventing sexually transmitted diseases, HIV, AIDS, teaching children about sexual hygiene, teaching them about contraception, teaching them about avoiding pregnancies, unwanted pregnancies, avoiding abortions, sexual abuse, violence. These are the things. And we all support that. Because any adult we would not want children, we want them to have some basic idea of sexual abuse, what is good touch, what is bad touch, if somebody does something to you, how to go report. So these are things that we want young people to have skills in. But what we do not want them to be taught, which comes under the umbrella of comprehensive sexuality education, is this whole thing of sexual desires, going after sexual desires. So on one side, the UNESCO program, the UN and the Sustainable Development Goals gives young people the right for sexuality. So with the right, you get sort of the rewards of promiscuous behavior. And on the other hand, they have global citizenship and these kinds of environmentalism where these are the responsibilities of young people, where you have to make sacrifices. So this is the change that they're trying to make. So like everywhere else, you have rights and responsibilities. And so young people are given this choice or given the right to go and enjoy sexuality and, go explore your bodies and go explore other kinds of bodies, whatever you want to do. And it's okay. And then, but in return, what young people are expected to do is to give up their, if you want to travel, you have to give that up because you have to reduce your carbon footprint. If there is a migrant crisis, you are taught to accept the migrant crisis, right? Because if Rohingya Muslims or you have a Kashmiri problem or a Khalistani problem, you're supposed to accept those things because in the name of global citizenship, right? You're supposed to be compassionate about that. Now, how do you bring about this change? Right? These are two contradicting thoughts. How do you bring about this change? This change is brought about through social emotional learning. And that's where the rewiring of the brain happens for young people. So we talk, often you have heard, especially this is the Sanskrit department, the importance of samskaras, the importance of satsanga. All of these things we are taught. At a young age, put samskaras in so that you develop a mind in a certain way. So essentially what the UNESCO is doing and the United Nations doing is actually putting in negative samskaras. So, and rewire the brain. That is, they've used ideas from Indian mind sciences, yoga, and all these practices. Dr. Jha talked about digestion, Rajiv's theory of digestion. So, we see that social emotional learning has its roots in Indian mind sciences and has been digested and then used it for mind control instead of liberation, as we would define it. So, going to sex education quickly, it teaches children to imagine gender and sexuality are different and nothing to do with biology. Gender is performative is what queer theory says. So you perform. So I'm performing being a woman. And the minute I get out, I can perform being a man by being aggressive or whatever it is. So they look at gender as a performative thing, nothing to do with the DNA. And so you come up with a bunch of, there are over 72 genders and sexual identities, and it's hard to even keep up with these personal pronouns. Then, so gender is fluid and you can be worn like clothes. And promoting a myriad alternative sexual identities and personal pronouns, incentivizing children to transition. So this is another huge thing. It's called grooming, sexual grooming in America, where young children, kindergarten onwards, are taught to change. They say if you're sad one day, you come into school, the teacher would tell you, maybe you're unhappy being a girl, maybe you want to try out some different clothes, and we can change your name into a boy's name, and maybe you'll feel better. And then there is a celebration, and you become a hero in the class. And so the children are like, okay, why not? I know I can try and be non-binary. Children don't know anything. So there is indoctrination and social engineering, active social engineering that is going on in classrooms. And then after you socially transition, with very little medical help, so the children say, okay, I'm non-binary now, and kids as young as 7, 8, they go to the gender clinics, and they say they have gender dysphoria. They are given puberty blockers to block their puberty, and it is sold as something that that doesn't do much. It just blocks your puberty temporarily till the child decides. You can always stop the puberty blockers, and you'll somehow get back. You can put puberty on halt and then get back on track again, and that's actually not true. Puberty blockers have tremendous ill effects on a child. There's bone density issues, there are issues of cancer, there are issues of sterility. The child can never ever be a parent. So at the age of 11, 12, when you don't know anything, you're making these big decisions, right? There are children in America at age 14 have body mutilating bilateral mastectomies. They've just removed their breasts thinking they want to be a man, and at 25 they realize, oh God, what have I done? And I want to, because all this whole thing is not cool anymore, and you're becoming mature, and these are not easy surgeries. In fact, New York Times, it's been promoted so much in the media as well. New York Times had this cover page about how this young woman, she has a beard and all of that, and it looks like a man, and she's done a full-on phalloplasty, as it's called. They've fashioned a penis with flesh from her thighs, and she's just wearing an underwear with a bulge to show that she has a new penis, but the thigh has a whole set, her muscles are missing on the thigh. So these are like body mutilating surgeries, and this is the standard of care for gender transitioning, and this is happening. This has come into AIMS through various channels. The Indian Institute of Pediatrics is now bought into this gender fluidity, so it's just not an American problem, it's come into India as well. So on one side, you're giving this comprehensive sexuality education, and you're rewiring, and you're confusing kids, and on the other side you've got all the other systems lined up to take care of your gender dysphoria through medical, and that's why Rajivji said it's legal, it's medical, and it's education. So all three aspects of government have been infiltrated. Now the other big thing is they encourage children, little tiny children, to masturbate. Yeah, and I don't want to, like you said, and Rajivji also, I do not want to be talking about these subjects. It actually doesn't, it's something that I don't enjoy doing, as you can well imagine. But if little children are told that you should go touch yourself. So Europe is like the cutting edge of all of this, right? So in Europe, 3-year-old toddlers are told, you should touch yourself and see how it feels. Does it feel good? In fact, the counselor asks a toddler, so when you touch it, do you feel good? So this is exactly how they ask 3-year-old little kids, toddlers, right? And you can say this is in Europe, but it's not. It's already come to Jharkhand. 10 years ago, see, we have the poor of India. It breaks my heart because the poor of India are finely aspirational. You go to any auto driver, they'll say, Amma, I work so many hours now because I didn't go to school, but I'm sending my child to a private school, and I'm sending him to tuition. So I want to work day and night. I have borrowed money. I'm in debt, and I've paid for this auto, and I want to do this. So it breaks my heart to see these hundreds of millions of youngsters whose parents have made are making tremendous sacrifices, and they send them to school, and the school, this is what the school is teaching in India, or is getting prepared to teach. So these interventions are not all there, but there's like Jharkhand has got it. They're doing some other interventions in Rajasthan. So it's slowly coming in, and the infrastructure is being laid by none other than our own big corporations. So the result is essentially, so you give them rights, and you teach them how, it's a how-to. Sexuality is how to do it. It's like a how-to, book. And so this is the United Nations guidelines, UNESCO guidelines. And at the end of it, children get into activism because they've just extremely agitated. If you transition and do all those things, of course you get agitated. And even if you don't, they want their sexual rights, because they've been wired to go after. Even pornography is not considered very bad, and even pedophilia. Yeah. So because the Marxists want all boundaries, they want to transgress all boundaries, and pedophilia essentially puts it's a generational boundary, adult versus child, and those boundaries also should be crossed. So there is United Nations is pushing for laws on that, and they got some pushback from the West. But what they want to say is that they want to destigmatize pedophilia, and also decriminalize, because they say that just having an idea of wanting to be sexually involved with a minor does not make you a criminal. And so they have actually changed the word from pedophile to a minor attracted person, MAP it's called. And being a MAP is not being a criminal. So this is where, we should know about all these things. So this is where the entire narrative is going. Now, what are the okay? But you can say maybe that's all good for our children. But there are many studies which show that 87% of comprehensive sexuality programs globally did not achieve their intended outcomes. It is sold to the government as reducing STDs and promoting increased condom use, delaying sexual initiation. That's how they promote these programs, but in fact it has the opposite effect. In fact, around more than 20% showed harmful effects: reduced use of condom, increased sexual activity, higher numbers of sexual partners, engagement in oral sex, and incidence of forced sex. So these are the results of comprehensive sexuality education that people have found. Now there is another whole, there is this Lalit group in Delhi. And they promote this through their organization. They promote something called the Drag Queen Story Hour. So in the US, it's very popular. So you take little kindergarten kids, and there are these drag queens, drag queens shows used to be for homosexual men. This was entertainment for homosexual men, where men dressed up as women perform. Right? So they'll have huge prosthetic breasts and skimpy clothing and highly feminine sort of makeup and all of that, and it would just be something fun that homosexual men did in nightclubs. Now these drag queen so they call these drag queens to come into schools, and it's happening in India and Bangalore, Delhi, all these places, to read to little children. A story to sort of sensitize them about inclusion. So they do it in the name of inclusion, but it has nothing to do with inclusion, because these drag queens have very sexually suggestive names like Monsoon Rush, Little Miss Hot Mess, names like that. That's the name of the drag queen who comes to read stories to your little kid, 5-year-old. And it's all about glitter, and so they wear skimpy clothes, it's all shiny, and so little kindergartners are all like, kids like color and glitz, and so they're just fascinated by this whole thing. And in India also it's happening, and it's a very sad thing that some of the big, the Keshav Suri Foundation, they fund all this. Now, if you look at the social emotional learning, so what happens with social emotional learning is that you want to create something called cognitive dissonance. So the United Nations the UNESCO essentially has a Category 1 institute in Delhi called the Mahatma Gandhi Institute of Education for Sustainable Peace and Sustainability, something like that. Right? Very nice. Mahatma Gandhi Peace, Sustainability, Education Institute. All good good words. Now, it's a Category 1 institute of the UNESCO, and so India is very proud. You know, a Category 1 institute in New Delhi. Wow, what a great thing. It's funded by our tax money. So you and I pay for it. Yeah, I also pay taxes in India, so I can say that. So you and I pay for it, and so it starts off with social emotional learning. There's a lot of good things. In addition, it's about meditation and chant. It could even be chanting Om and all of that. So you might think, this is nice, but there's a lot of data collection. So what they do with this social emotional learning is it's into every subject. And so when a child is doing math, before the math could be a social justice kind of problem. In fact, there is an American scholar, James Lindsay, and he talks about how these woke ideas get into mathematics. So he gives a very good example. He says, little Johnny is a second grade problem. Little Johnny goes to the amusement park, which is 30 miles away. They have covered 10 miles. How many miles are left? How much more do they have to go? So the first week of discussion, they say little Johnny goes to the amusement park. So who knows about amusement park? So all the kids are saying, so then of course there's rich and poor. So some kids say, I don't know what an amusement park is. So they talk about the social justice issue of poverty. Okay, so we still haven't solved the math problem. The second day, little Johnny goes with his mother and father to the amusement park. They've covered 10 miles. How many miles are left? It's 30 miles away. So the second day, they go and say, little Johnny goes with his mother and father. How many of you have mothers and fathers? So one little girl says, no, I have two mothers. Another one says, I have two fathers. One says, I have just a mother. So with just a mother, we talk about feminism. We've talked just two fathers. We talk about LGBTQ issues. So that's the discussion. We still haven't solved the problem. Third day, little Johnny goes with mother and father to the park. They're driving around. How many of you have a car to drive? And is a car the best way of transportation? Should we use a train? Should we walk? Should we bike? We talk about environmentalism. Yeah. So this is how woke ideas get into mathematics, and the math is never done. And that's why so it's not like you read the problem and it's okay. It's the pedagogy. It's just not the content. It is pedagogy. And this is the Freirean way of teaching. This is Paulo Freire who said education is always political, and therefore we have to conscientize the children. So that means they have critical consciousness we have to develop. So they see political struggle in every aspect of life. So in any subject, it's about, okay, is there anything political here? So this is the American system of education, which is all coming in through the UNESCO. So the UNESCO MGIEP, it starts off good. There are good parts to it. I'm not going to say everything that is there is bad. But the social emotional learning, the end goal of social emotional learning is there. Now, they're training hundreds and thousands of teachers in India in social emotional learning, and every day if you go to Twitter thing, there'll be thousands of teachers who say, yeah, I got certified in SEL, I'm a certified SEL teacher, all of that. Now, what do they do? According to their own literature, they say we take two United Nations Sustainable Development Goals which are contradictory. Like I told you, like little 5-year-olds are given, they're taught world hunger. And then they have their little tiffin box for lunchtime, and they said, you should not eat now. Don't eat. So in the little child, and you might say, yeah, that's good. Let children know what it is to be hungry. But little children do not think like that. They cannot handle stress. So, and that's why they're children. Now, you've created this cognitive dissonance in them. Because on one side they want to eat, on the other side they're told that if you eat and while others are hungry, this is a bad thing. You're a bad person. So they don't know how to deal with these two, contradicting ideas. And so what they do is they have this cognitive dissonance, and that creates stress in them. So you purposely, through social emotional, you create stress in a child, and that stress manifests as guilt, or fear. Yeah, you fear all the youngsters are, oh, environmental doomsday. It's all going to it be the end of, like Greta, Thunberg saying, "How dare you?" And all of that. They're just so anxious about the environment. Yes, we have an environment problem. I'm not saying no, but the anxiety level among young people is very, very high. So because of this cognitive dissonance they have, which has come into guilt or fear of doomsday, or guilt that, oh my goodness, I'm privileged and I live in a good and I'm causing this problem. Yeah. So then when you have this guilt or fear, these emotions, you are given social emotional learning, and social emotional learning tells you become an activist. You channel this guilt or this fear or this anger that you have into activism, and that way you will feel good. So there are then processes where you can be an activist of some sort, and then you're given the next set of challenges, and the cycle continues. And this the Mahatma Gandhi Institute talks about it. This is what we do. They say we take to, because these are 21st century skills, because 21st century you need all these problems and you need to know how to cope. So you have to give some and lose some. So this is what they're doing. This is how they revive. Meanwhile, math, science, reading, numeracy, literacy is plummeting slowly. So this is what's happening at this fancy MGIEP center. Now, quickly, I want to go through. Okay, so we're back to this drag queen story hour. There's something called autogynephilia. So, from what I understand, that under the umbrella of trans, right, you have the transsexual who believes they are the opposite sex. Then you have the transvestite who likes to dress up as usually a female because of having a traumatic childhood with a caretaker, usually a mother who's extremely dominating, and they feel like that trauma can be handled. It's a way of healing for them. They take power and they dress up, and it's some psychological thing like that. And then you have autogynephilia, where men get aroused by dressing up as hyper feminine women with all these prosthetic breasts and skimpy clothes, and they actually get sexually aroused. And these are the people that we're putting in front of our little kids when you have a drag queen story out. Yeah. So it's totally unheard of, for adult men to have sexual arousal by dressing up as women and being with little children. Yeah. And any parent in their right mind would not allow this. So now let me tell you, that unfortunately NITI Aayog is the epicenter for all this activity. Now, so there are two activities that happen in the NITI Aayog. There are external forces that lobby the NITI Aayog to make certain laws through the legislature, and there are some other the external forces also come up with pre-packaged programs. So if I say go through the NITI Aayog and I lobby them to make comprehensive sexuality education mandatory, the minute the law comes out, you have a plug and play program at the grassroots. So the government or people don't have to do anything. It's mandated. Here is a plug and play program. You just fit it in and then you're good to go. So this is how the Breaking India forces operate through the NITI Aayog. Now, they have many technical consultants and experts from outside and inside. Now there are three major Indian companies. Tatas. The Tatas are huge, and HCL. So in the sex education field. Now JRD Tata founded this Population Foundation of India. All the rich people, the globalists, don't like population. They don't like a bunch of us, like just too many people. They think the world would be better off if we depopulated. Yeah. So the Population Foundation of India started by JRD Tata, and late Ratan Tata was the chairman of the Population Foundation of India, highly regarded. Everyone gives them funding. They themselves are very rich, and they work as policy advisors to the NITI Aayog on comprehensive sexuality education. And the other is HCL. So when I told you Shiv Nadar schools had this survey with non-binary, you connect the dots and you realize HCL Foundation is on the forefront of scaling up comprehensive sexuality education. So HCL is on the forefront of scaling up for teacher their teacher training education for on the net, and they're scaling up teacher training for comprehensive sexuality education, whereas Tata's Population Foundation of India is doing grassroots comprehensive sexuality education. So you have the grassroots, you have online education and platforms, because HCL is a tech company, so you can scale up this really fast. They have MOUs with literally all states. All state governments have said, okay, we don't know how to do it. We have to also comply with SDGs, and we don't know how to do this. They handed over it to HCL and Tata's non-profits. Now, and Piramal, of course, is also an advisor. Piramal Foundation is a consultant to the NITI Aayog. So I'm just going to quickly tell you how. So this is sort of the connections with the NITI Aayog. Yeah, and quickly read. NITI Aayog itself, right? It doesn't want to do the dirty job of doing SEL and CSE. I'm sure they'll, right to information. You can find out a lot of things. So what the NITI Aayog cannot do through the front door, they do through the back door. So they funded again, with our tax money, 2 ventures, one for SEL and one for CSE. Now, the SEL program also is funded by UNICEF and USAID. In fact, yesterday, USAID was brought to notice by the Trump government for being a Breaking America force. Yeah, they've done all kinds of things. They funded the Wuhan lab. They've done all kinds of things, and so USAID plays a very active role in India doing these Breaking India efforts. They, in fact, in the Snakes in the Ganga, we pointed out that USAID gives money to young influencers for radio, where they can talk about sex education and alternate lifestyles and things like that. They actually fund these people. So USAID is doing this mischief, and then on the other side, World Bank and UNDP fund the comprehensive sexuality app that NITI Aayog has done as a startup. So NITI Aayog has this Atal incubation center, and through the Atal incubation center, they have started these 2 ventures. Now the Ministry of Electronics and Information is also funding this. Right? Okay. Now moving on, we have the International Planned Parenthood Foundation. They have a very dubious past. They were into the eugenics movement. They did not want African Americans. They thought they were of low genetic breed, and they wanted to get rid of. So that was like the origins of the International Planned Parenthood Foundation, and they didn't find a home. But their first international office was in Mumbai, in India, because again, those days we thought population was a problem and all that. And their affiliate or their branch office is called the Family Planning Association of India. Okay, so they are funding the Family Planning Association of India, and they have in their books, they say that they have 3 successful policy and or legislative changes in 2022 alone. Successful. Because, in their reports, when you read, where they report back to their American bosses, America actually funds Planned Parenthood, American government, which is going to stop with Trump. But they actually had 3 legislative changes that they successfully made that were favoring them. And they reported that back in their yearly report. So you have that, and then you have UNICEF and UNFPA again funding the Family Planning Association of India. Then you have Tata Steel, Tata Motors, Tata Trust, HCL Foundation, Mahindra, NASA, all these people funding the Family Planning Association of India. Okay, so then you have, of course, there's no NGO ecosystem without the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation playing a mischief. So of course you will have them, and then you have the Boston Consulting Group, which is like a McKinsey. It's a very high-end consulting group. They're the education consultants to the NITI Aayog. They're also the education consultants to the World Economic Forum, which is just an organization of globalists who want to depopulate the world. So, there's a link there. Yeah. Then you have UNICEF, which is funding Population Foundation of India, which is the Ratan Tata, the Tata's non-profit, which is a policy consultant to the NITI Aayog. And then, of course, you have the World Economic Forum, also is a partner of the NITI Aayog, and the NITI Aayog very obediently has a lovely dashboard telling the United Nations, how they're doing on compliance with the Sustainable Development Goals. So it's very, very clear that the NITI Aayog is playing a very active part. It's not, it's just not some negligence and things like that. They're actually funding SEL and CSE. So if you're doing a venture funding, I'm sure you do due diligence. So so this is happening with the NITI Aayog. So as I said, so these are all extremely troubling initiatives that we've taken on, and we have to in Jharkhand and places like that, they've tried, there is another program through the Ministry of Health, which is called the Rashtriya RKSK, Rashtriya Kishore Swasthya Karyakram. It came off as because sex education is, the parents are immediately worried. So what you can't do through the education ministry, you do through the healthcare ministry. So you bring it in and you say it's peer education, and you have online apps, you have Sneh AI, which is again funded by one of the Tata groups, right, the non-profits, which can bypass parents. You have an AI, Sneh will give you your mother's, warm, feel good, tender loving care, and then you can ask Sneh AI about sexual things. All the parts of comprehensive sexuality education, like I said, very like masturbation and things like that are not yet there, but there is a constant push to stick to something called the ITGSE standards, which are the United Nations standards for sexuality. And when you look at that, you have all that there. So Population Foundation of India and all these other NGOs are pushing India constantly to stick to UN, WHO guidelines and UN guidelines, right? There's something big. So that's where they want to take India. So we have, this is really timely. We have still time to stop all of this, and just, I don't even want Indic knowledge systems and all of that. I just want basic numeracy and literacy for our children, if nothing else. Thank you. बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद आपके इस वक्तव्य के